Hey, what's going on, guys? Pineapple Sway here. Today I'm going to be talking about Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, the clone theory, and why I think the clone theory is a bunch of BS. I've had the pleasure of playing this game's story again. As you can see, I'm on my offline account. This is for an entirely different project, my season guide that'll be coming soon. But basically, um, I. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. But basically, I played the story again, and it's just incredible how many flaws there are in this game's story, and especially when it comes to connecting to the Nexus and the game's post launch content story. And that all reflects back on the clone theory. I think it is more than obvious that the clone theory wasn't the original plan, wasn't the original intention. I've even made videos about this, but I kind of want to make like a single point video about it, like just the clone theory in itself, not the game's actual ending, not the game's actual story, if that makes sense. And, you know, basically to just say, like in hindsight, like short form, the clone theory is just BS. And because why, you may ask? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Playing the story again, I don't know what they had set up or what they had planned. That's something that we'll just never know. But I think it's more than, true that the Justice League we face in the game's main story is the actual Justice League, while the Justice League we get in the game's post launch content are the supposed clones. And there are a few things to sort of prove this point and prove these theories, starting with the Flash. When you meet the Flash and kill the Justice League, he obviously gets captured by Batman and Brainiac, and then is then corrupted. When you meet him later in the story and you defeat the Behemoth, Wonder Woman uses the lasso of truth on him, and the lasso of truth, obviously, it speaks for itself. When she uses the lasso of truth on the Flash, he turns back to himself. He's normal. He's, like I said, he's normal. His eyes turn back to normal. His corruption fades, and he tells Wonder Woman exactly how to defeat them. And that's obviously what he says of we have to die to save the world. And through that, you kill all the Justice League members, and that's kind of how it concludes. And another point I like to bring up too is if Brainiac had clones of the Justice League, why waste time recovering their bodies after each and every fight? And why teleport them to different planets and different dimensions to have them rest and heal? That's sort of the whole like gimmick. Is when we would defeat a Justice League member, you would notice immediately after Brainiac would recover the body and send them to a different dimension. That's what he did with the Flash. That's what he did with all of them. The only ones we didn't get to see was Batman and Superman, but we got to see Green Lantern and the Flash. And that's another thing too is the the entire intention of Miss Freeze was for the Justice League to be rescued and put basically in her pods, and that she would use her technology from her planet to save them. And we save Green Lantern and the Flash. That's why they're there at the final boss. But we don't save Batman and Superman because they apparently were clones, and that the League members we fought were clones. And it just kind of it doesn't mesh together or make any sense because we were able to save the Flash. We were able to save Green Lantern. We literally put them in the pods to save them. And that was Freeze's entire gimmick. That was her full intention from literally every source I've talked to. Her entire intention was to save the League. But then you find out at the game's basically end of the story that the Justice League wanted to get caught. Actually, that was their plan all along, was to get caught. They knew about the 13 Brainiacs. They knew that if they got caught, they could defeat them. And it's just a bunch of BS, basically, because it makes no sense. And there's other theories and other like things to back up my claims as well. The big one being Miss Freeze. The entire reason she was brought into the game was because of her tech and her, being smart basically. She was very smart and knew how to save them. But, you know, it just kind of all collapses. And that's kind of why they didn't go with Killer Frost or um, like a Captain Cold, for example, is because Miss Freeze, her entire point of being in this game was to save and help the Justice League recover. But then you find out, well, they're clones and that we didn't actually fight them. So, what was the entire point? Brainiac was doing experiments on them throughout the story to bring them back to life, to keep them alive, and running experiments on them using their DNA to create the infused soldiers, to create the infused army, and to even infuse himself. And it's just like, and another point too is Green Lantern. I don't really know exactly how Green Lantern works, but I'm pretty sure an actual Green Lantern has to wield the the Green Lantern ring, and they're the only ones that can use it. Obviously, the game kind of takes a step back because it doesn't really make sense. If the Green Lantern was a clone, he wouldn't be able to use his constructs, which means Brainiac had and used the actual Green Lantern, if you get what I'm saying. And it kind of backs up my point too, because even in the season 2 like teaser, you can see Green Lantern basically on this he's basically trapped, and Brainiac is using his ring as experiments to basically make this infused army. I don't know if anything I'm saying is making any sense, but basically the reason why they went with the clone theory was just to make people happy. I don't know how they were going to bring back the League. My guess is obviously we were going to rescue all of them, and then Freeze was going to heal them in the pod, since that's literally Miss Freeze's entire point. But instead, the game goes with the ending of, well, we did rescue Flash and Green Lantern, so I guess they're technically not clones, but the Batman and Superman we faced in the story were clones, and that the main Batman and Superman wanted to be captured so they could defeat Brainiac. And you see where the story just kind of falls off a cliff. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of just ranting on now, but it's just the fact that this clone theory isn't really a good way, I feel, and a good ending. Obviously, I get why they had to do it, and I've told many people this, that really the best sequel for this game, if they wanted to restore faith in people, would have been a Justice League game, and having to deal with the fact that the Justice League committed all of those horrible acts and killed and slaughtered millions of people and almost destroyed the entire world because they were corrupted by Brainiac. But with the clone theory, it kind of throws all of that out, the window. Basically, all of their actions that are committed in the game's main story just doesn't make sense. And then with Batman 2, another thing I like to bring up, another point, is when Batman's about to shoot Harley, he hesitates. He pauses for a second, thinking about what is he doing. So I think it's really just all of this, and even Superman, he hesitates as well. It's just with all of this, it gets a little confusing, because I even like to bring up the point too of Wonder Woman. A lot of people don't know that Wonder Woman is actually still alive, and Deathstroke talks about her being alive in season 4 in his little codex entry. He mentions that Wonder Woman was basically remade from her gods on her planet, and then he mentions Batman as well, basically proving that before we knew how the game was going to end, we knew that they were alive. And that's another thing too, is the game's audio. There's different examples of the game's audio kind of tricking itself and not correlating with the ending, and correlating more with that the Justice League weren't clones, And another thing I like to think of too, just off the top of my head, was if Brainiac was able to clone an entire Justice League army at his disposal, why would he even bother creating an army, or why wouldn't he bother creating an army of the Justice League, or why would he even bother using their powers for himself? It just, there's a lot of things that don't make sense, and the problem with this game is we're probably really never going to know how it was supposed to end, or what was going to be that ending. All we knew is that originally the final battle was going to feature all of the Justice League members, and that Wonder Woman was going to be there, and that at some point in the post-launch story we would have been able to bring back Wonder Woman and rescue the League members. And yeah, that's really about it, my 10-minute rant. What do you guys think of the clone theory? I'm on the fence of it's just complete bullcrap and it kind of just destroys everything this game stands for. But knowing this game's reception, knowing how people feel about this game, maybe it was just the best decision that Rocksteady could make. And that's kind of where I lean towards now, that they didn't really have a choice. They had to go with that route of that they were clones. But if you've played the story, you know exactly what I mean. Like, why would Brainiac bother sending them to different dimensions and healing them, since it literally happens in the game's main story? But if he could just clone them, then he wouldn't need to do that. Anyways, though, this is Pineapple Sway. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think of the clone theory and the ending of Kill the Justice League. I love to hear all thoughts and opinions, even if they're bad or good. Did you like the ending? Did you not like the ending? Yeah. Anyways, though, peace out.